Hey guys, it is February 1st, 2022. This is our first balance patch in the new year. It's been about 8 months since we've had a balance patch. Sorry, 8 months, 8 weeks, 2 months since we've had a balance patch. And it's a good time to have a balance patch, and I'll tell you why. One, they went a little bold on a couple of the changes they made in the previous patch, and so Rehgar had been sitting at like a 65% win rate in our average games for quite a while. Had been kind of a first ban, first pick priority in competitive matches, so he kind of dominated all levels of play. So I'd expect he's going to get a couple nerfs, but I'm excited to see what else they decided to do here. So, as we go through, I want to talk a little bit about how I generally do balance patch notes. I like to break it down into like three categories, but I generally just focus on two: competitive and non competitive. What I consider competitive is the highest levels of play, and if it's coordinated play, it's kind of a little bit lower all the way up. So, for example, I competitive games or competitive balancing generally affects like Grandmaster in Storm League, and it affects like I would say Division A and above in NGS Nexus Gaming Series, or maybe like Division 2 or up in Heroes Lounge. So for the most part, the upper level competitive teams that are coordinated and the only the highest level of competitive players in Storm League. And those are the two areas that I consider competitive. So I like to kind of view how it's going to affect competitive and how it's going to affect non-competitive. Non-competitive is the majority of us people that are playing from bronze to masters, and people that are on teams that might be coordinated but maybe not at the highest level where the coordination is the biggest factor, but more just how good you are at those heroes. With that being said, let's get right into it. Diablo, Black Soulstone. Upon reaching level 10, souls consumed when resurrecting is decreased from 100 to 75. You're less punished for dying, and that's a huge thing for Diablo in the late game, because if you lose those souls in the late game, you're kind of done for. You lose a lot of what makes Diablo strong. Now, Diablo is one of the best tanks for scaling into the late game, but he loses a lot of that scaling by dying even once. And so this kind of allows him to get them back. And it's a lot easier to get soul stones in the early game than it is the late game, because it's risky to use your talents to get them early, and you won't be clearing as many waves late. So overall, I think this is a pretty solid change. Devastating Charge, the level 13 Q quest, armor reductions being increased, and that's when you slam someone into a wall, you reduce their armor by 15. Now it's 20. And Hellfire, damage per second increased by 30 to 33, so a 10% increase in damage on the burn aspect of the 13. Keep in mind, both of these talents have other aspects to them. Level 13, this is only the quest when it's completed, and before it's completed, it still increases the damage of your Q by 50%, at least the slam damage of your Q. And then Hellfire, the damage per second is only one aspect. People generally take it for the increased spell power. Overall, this is a pretty major buff to Diablo. In my opinion, he was already one of the strongest tanks in the competitive scene. In fact, he had the highest win rate of tanks in CCL in the last season. The last I checked, he was at 61% compared to Johanna, who is basically permanently banned, at 58%, Anubarak at 54%, and I think there was a third one that was a little under that. But as far as popular tanks go, he was the highest win rate of the popular tanks. So to see him getting these buffs, I think he'll become the highest priority in the competitive environment, outside of maybe Johanna, where Johanna is the best. For example, the maps or comps that she dominates in, I think she'll stay the strongest there. Otherwise, Diablo will be the best. For your average games, I still think that other tanks might be a little bit better, because Diablo's wave clear, camp clear is really light, and he doesn't have a reliable escape. So, yeah, outside of competitive, he's a little bit riskier. But overall, he's still one of my favorite tanks for playing in any range of the MMR. ETC, getting a light health buff. He's getting some health regen to compensate for that new health bar. And he's getting a buff on Power Slide, doing just a little bit more damage, about what, 15%, 10 to 15% more damage. With that, I don't think this is enough to really bring him back in the meta, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. Bruisers, Malthael, they're bumping up his percent health damage from his trait from 1.75% to 2%. Level 7, Touch of Death, activating to reduce the healing of the opposing team, the cooldowns being reduced. Shroud of Wisdom, the activatable, the cooldowns being reduced. And Memento Mori, the trait upgrade at level 16, the damage bonus is being reduced from 90% to 60%. This is a significant drop to the point where if they would have dropped it from like 90 to 80%, I would be like, oh, they're just compensating for the buff that they gave. But this is almost an overcompensation for a talent that already wasn't really meta. Generally at 16, people would usually take like the W does percent health or the Q having like longer range and lower cooldown. If you wanted to survive longer, you'd generally go Q. Or if you were going to get nano boosted, you'd generally go W. And so it was rare that people would take this in competitive over anything else. Overall, these changes will be pretty good in competitive as the meta is shifting to be more bruiser heavy. He'll be a great counter to heavy bruiser team comps. And I think that for your standard games, Malthael was already a pretty solid option, and I don't think these change that potential. Yrel, something very interesting is happening with Yrel. I talked about this before, but they buffed a couple E-talents, and I said if they buff any more auto attack or E-talents, her E-build will become the meta build. Now, I'm not Liam. Keep in mind, he's going to be probably the first to ask when it comes to Yrel changes. But I do still want to point out something very interesting. So Divine Purpose, additional functionality, its cooldown is reset when Yrel casts an ult. It's a good thing to have because you can pop your ult and then as a defensive tool and be able to get out of a fight or right into a fight. It could be also kind of a combo piece with this because you could use, let's say you get the upgrade of your W at 16, you can do trait W and do a chunk of someone's health, and then you can reset your trait, jump at someone, and then do a quick W again, doing another chunk of their health. You could stun a group of people if you use 2 trait Ws, but keep in mind all of your abilities still have cooldowns, so the best purpose for this would be to use like your trait W and then to jump on people, or to jump on people and then trait W. And so you can utilize 2 instances of your trait if you're fast with it. I don't think this particular change is going to make any major difference. Here's where it is going to make a difference. Level 1, the auto attack talent is getting buffed. So what this talent does is if you use an ability and it hits a hero, you get a little icon next to your name that your next auto attack will heal you. This talent has been buffed a couple of times, with the other talent that was popular on that tier being nerfed a little bit. So that's one piece. The next piece is the Holy Wrath is also being buffed. This is, again, after you use an ability, you get an icon next to your thing. Your next attack is AoE and does more damage. So seeing as both of these are getting buffed, it actually buffs E-build, and the reason why is because the way auto attack E-build works is there's an auto attack talent on 1 and 16, and then there's all these other E talents, and the level 7 talent makes it where your E has like no cooldown if you jump on someone. The level 13 talent slows someone by 75%. So what ends up happening in the E build is, the E auto attack build anyways, is you will jump on a target, get a low cooldown on your E, they're slowed by 70%, you'll do 1 auto attack to the target, which is bonus damage and heals, then you'll start charging your E and stepping away from the target, and while they're slowed, you'll jump right back on them again. You can almost permanently slow someone, and you can be out healing the damage that they're doing, because if they're melee, they can't keep up with you, and if they're range, you're Yrel, you're probably going to be able to bully them anyways. And so with all of those kind of factors combined, this E build was really dominant whenever someone didn't have a reliable way to interrupt you at almost every E that you're going to be casting. And with them keep buffing the auto attack pieces of this, and they buffed the E talents recently, and they're also buffing the armor version of the E talent again, it really makes me wonder if we can see more of a dive oriented Yrel that can be a lot more impactful at just repeatedly diving in the backline, maybe with a couple other people giving them all armor and just doing a lot of damage. They're also buffing the level 16 Divine Favor cooldown reduction increase from 2 to 2.5. This talent hasn't really been good since they nerfed the heal on 4. In fact, you used to be able to main heal with Yrel, between the level 4 and level 16 talents. And when they nerfed all the healers back in like 2018, that was actually something I did for a little while. They nerfed all the healers, and people found that it was almost better to not run a healer and just run healer or people with self healing. So I actually ran Yrel as a main healer. I would run like ETC as a main healer, Yrel as a main healer, and Abathur as a main healer. And it was a weird time, but the teams, I mean, we were dominating at that time because people would basically be down one hero, and I was able to keep everyone topped off playing essentially just a bruiser. So I don't think we're back at that. Our healers are very strong right now, but I do think that this E build has a lot of potential, and it's also an easier playstyle of Yrel if you're interested in learning Yrel. In the competitive scene, will probably only be used if the enemies have very little interrupts, but in your average games, I bet this is going to have a higher win rate than all of our other builds. Malfurion. Malfurion is getting a few things. Deep Root, which is the bigger root. It gives you mana every time that you hit someone with a root, which is kind of nice, but that's not really the reason people take that talent. Vengeful Roots, the movement speed of the Trien has been increased by 60%, and the health is being increased. Both are pretty good, but again, competing against like the sleep talent right now is just not an option in competitive. I think Vengeful Roots can be pretty good outside of competitive, though. Celestial Alignment, bonus basic attack damage off of your W's increased a little bit. Right now, we're not at the point to where we were before where you needed that, and so I don't think this is going to change anything. Revitalize. Mana gained changed from 80 to 15% of Malfurion's max mana. So what this talent did was it made it to where you would give yourself innervate whenever you applied innervate to an ally, and now it's changing it to be 15% of your mana instead of an innervate, I guess, or maybe you just gain the mana from it. Either way, this should be really good as far as overall mana as the game continues going on. Ysera's Gift, bonus regrowth healing increased from 60 to 75%. This became the meta talent as teams got more mobile, and it became the meta talent because you didn't need to risk landing W's all the time. It also is the meta talent because a lot of our healers in the highest levels of competitive right now are on high ping, so it's hard to reliably get a lot of heals. So they're then returning the nerf that the buff that they had. So bonus regrowth duration increased from 3 to 5 seconds. They dropped this from 5 to 3 when this became the meta talent. And Moonlit Harmony additional functionality passive increases Moonfire heals by 20%. This talent's interesting because what it used to do was your W would heal more based on the amount of targets you had Q on, I think. Now it's just a flat increase on Moonfire heals as well as the thing before. All three of the level 16 talents are still meta, and they're all competitive with each other. I think you can go any of them. If you're not good at landing your W's, which you probably should get good at if you're going to be playing Malfurion, Ysera's Gift is always good. Ysera's Gift's also pretty good if everyone's taking damage reliably or you need to heal people away from team fights. So, for example, if you're going to be fighting on a map that has a lot of like boss fights or has a lot of camp fights, I think like Garden of Terror is a really good example. The objective does a lot of damage to people, the cams do a lot of damage, and the team fights might be a little fewer far between than you'd like. Ysera's Gift's really good. If you're going to be team fighting a lot or they have a lot of frontline targets, Moonlit's probably the best, and I would say if you need a mix of both, Nature's Balance is the best. Level 20, Astral Communion, bonus silence duration increased from 1 to 2 seconds, so it goes from it goes from 4 to 5, I think. Overall, are these going to make a difference in where Malfurion sits in the competitive scene? Yes, to an extent. He's starting to get a little bit more priority lately because people are kind of noticing the advantages of playing split team compositions right now, and he's the best for that. But I don't think any of these changes individually are going to make the difference with him. I think with all of them combined, it certainly is going to bump up his win rate in every form quite a bit. But I don't know how well he competes with Stukov, but we'll see about Stukov's nerfs. Between Rehgar and Stukov's nerfs, I think we might see a lot of Malfurion. Rehgar, sitting at a 65% win rate in just about every game mode right now. Let's see where Rehgar is. They're reducing his health. kind of prevents him from being a bruiser anymore. Health regen to compensate. Chain heal, mana cost is being increased, so you can't just cast it as much as you want to anymore. Duration of the totem is being reduced. It's going to affect all of the totem talents, but specifically the one that heals every 2 seconds. That's one less heal that you'll get from that talent. And the health of the totem is being reduced. Totems are kind of hard to kill, at least the Earthbind totem specifically, so reducing the health makes the totem build a little bit weaker. Colossal Totem is being moved from level 7. That's the larger size and increased duration. Feral Heart is your Z. Armor is being reduced. Duration of the armor is being reduced. Earth Living Elements, duration is being reduced. Healing is being reduced. That's the Q would heal over time if they're lower health. Healing Totem, the health is being reduced. The duration is going back to its old self where it heals slower, but it lasts a little bit longer. Grounded Totems moved from level 1 to level 7. That's the attack speed and spell power slow. It's also being reduced. Purification trait on level 7, its healing's being reduced, healing duration's being reduced, change functionality, and Pit Fighter, the spell power per ally is being reduced. So all of these changes are a big hit to totem build, but W build still is strong, and it's still going to be above a 50% win rate. So part of the reason that I say this is before Rehgar's rework, full W build was the only build that Rehgar had that was above 50% win rate, and it was significantly above 50% win rate. It was like 52 or 53%. It got buffed with all of these, but because totem build got so much more buffed, it got outshined. And now that totem build is nerfed, it's probably equal, if not a little bit weaker than W build right now. W build is very, very strong. And totem build, I would say in competitive, is still the build to go. I don't know if he should be prioritized over Stukov, but I do think that totem build is still very, very strong. They didn't nerf the healing directly. They did nerf it indirectly with the other changes. They didn't nerf the level 16 big slow. So overall, I would say he's going to go from a 65% win rate down to a 54% win rate off of these changes. He'll still be a very dominant force. And in competitive, I don't think that he's a high priority. I would say top 4. But in standard games, I still think he's, if you're playing healer main, this is still a good hero to move up in rank with. Whether you go the totem build or just W build. Even trait build probably still works out okay right now. Stukov, he's been dominant. His E reset build has made it to where if you're playing against a Stukov, you have to play a spread composition. If you don't play a spread composition, you're basically forced to deal with not being able to cast abilities in your front line. Low blow has been very strong. They're nerfing it a little bit. I think this is a solid nerf. Vetted touch, all of these are kind of light. They're just trying to get people to do different builds. Long pitch, actually with both of these changes, could make W build a little bit stronger. Could certainly make it a possibility in a couple different game modes. Growing Infestation, the maximum channel duration being nerfed is pretty huge. Part of the reason that this exists and why the nerf is happening is because Low Blow has another talent that basically says, another aspect to it that basically says your E lasts 1 second after you cancel it. Well, at the end of your maximum channel, people were able to get an extra second off of it that they weren't able to get before. So this is a nerf, but it actually kind of returns it back to normal. And with this and the reset, there was actually a couple times that people saw 2 silence fields out at the same time from a single Stukov. So it's crazy. Bio kill switch cooldown reduced from 8 to 7. That's not bad. Overall, yeah, they're just trying to buff underutilized talents. It hungers. Hero damage instances needed to proc cooldown reduction is being increased from 6 to 8. The E build is still going to be strong, but it's going to be a little bit harder to manage with less time. More time required, less time available, and a little bit less damage. With all of those things, it'll drop it down to be a competitive healer, but probably, mean, he's still probably going to be first ban for quite a while until people really get used to playing around him, but he's going to drop down in dominance. I think in competitive, he's still a top 3 healer. Range assassins, Azmodan's Q damage is being reduced. Wrath is Q damage bonus is being increased. Bombardment additional targets is being increased. So instead of 2 additional targets where you can hit 3 people with your auto attack, now you can hit 4. Demonic Invasion, the impact damage is being increased. The explosion damage is being reduced. And the movement speed is being increased. Additional functionalities, the explosion damage is doubled against heroes. So against structures, you're going to be doing a lot less to structures, about half the damage that you were doing before. To heroes, it's going to be probably about the same. The new dropped damage during a team fight, plus the explosion damage being doubled during team fights, will probably even out, and the extra movement speed will make it to where it's more reliable that it's going to hit heroes. Overall, these changes to Azmodan are going to make him a tad bit stronger in team fights and a tad bit weaker in split pushing. It won't affect the competitive scene at all, but it will make him a little less annoying to play against in standard games. Genji, agile dismount additional functionality, landing near enemy heroes slows them by 30%. Pathfinder change functionality, jumping over terrain with cyber agility increases your movement speed by 25%. Grants stealth for 4 seconds. That's kind of cool. It's going to be great for leaving fights, dash in, hop over terrain, you're gone. Like, there's no catching you at that point. But I don't know how often the stealth can be used aggressively for a Genji, that is. Genji's not known for like close range setup into a stun, into a blow up. He's known for kind of long range poking, looking for opportunities to finish people off. So the stealth won't make a difference offensively, but it is kind of cool to be used defensively. Shuriken Mastery Q, heroes hit is being reduced, and the damage is being reduced. Shuriken charges refund increased from 2 to 3. It's kind of cool. When you refresh, you get all of your shurikens back, but they're nerfing the actual like damage bonuses from it. Cyber Shield, additional functionality. Genji dodges 1 heroic basic attack every 5 seconds. So he gains a... Oh, they're just combining these 2 talents. Steady Blade. Cyber Shield trait. Wasn't Cyber Shield? I'll have to double check that. Steady Blade, E damage bonus is being increased from 20 to 30%. That was the E talent that if you hit a bunch of people, it increased the damage of your next E. Most people didn't take it because you often use your second E to get out. You go in, get a kill, and then you dash out, which means that your next E is going to do less damage. But there was kind of a playstyle of them for a little bit when Rexar and Samuro started gaining popularity, where there was extra bodies on the field, and you would go the E cooldown reduction, you would dash through a bunch of people, get an instant reset on your E, even though you didn't get a kill, and then you would dash through the second time and do like double damage with your E, and just kill like 2 people, get a reset, and go back through. I just, in competitive, it was never really a world, so people always just did the repeated cut. That way you could charge in, get the repeated cut, get a kill, and then dash out and not be punished. This change probably won't make any major difference. Sharpened Stars, additional functionality. Swift Strikes refund grants 1 charge of Shuriken. I mean, if you're dashing in and getting a kill, a charge of Shuriken is not going to make a big difference in the team fight post level 20. Overall, I don't think any of these changes are going to make a huge difference in Genji, but I do think that what they're trying to do is just step him in the right direction of, hey, he's still a hero you guys can play, and he can be very strong. But currently, as far as like mosquito damage dealers go, in competitive, Tracer's still just generally better than Genji. Genji's better for leading to finish off kills, but Tracer can do that while also doing more damage and being more annoying and safer at the same time. For your standard games, I don't think this is going to make any major difference to Genji. Greymane. Greymane's been one of the strongest auto attackers in the game that hasn't been affected too much by the meta shifts. What I mean by the meta shifts is more bruisers, the healers are self-sufficient, and kind of answering that side of things. Greymane actually had the highest win rate out of damage dealers in CCL for heroes with over 10 games played. He was at 65% win rate. Wolfheart, he's getting cooldown reduction. Insatiable, basic attacks during Inner Beast reduce healing fountain's cooldown. So what this talent did before was gave you your mana back while you were in, while you had your W running. Now with the healing fountain cooldown reduction, this is actually going to be the best talent for his level 4 for almost every game that you're in solo queue. It doesn't even say it needs to be against a hero. You can literally grab a fountain, go to a siege camp, clear a siege camp, or sorry, a bruiser camp while your fountain's going, and you'll probably have your fountain back or pretty close to being back at the end of that bruiser camp. This talent seems way better than maybe I'm misreading this or I'm over assuming this, but for a level 4 talent, this seems way better than the competing talents he has. The dash away and stealth generally won't save you because if you're dashing away and you would have died, most likely the stealth won't change that unless you're being chased by an auto attacker who has no way to reveal you. I loved that talent. A lot of people like the armor, the physical armor talent, where you dash away, you get like block charges. But this just seems so good. Any map that there's camps, and also maps that there's team fights, you could be using this ranged and basically keep going back and getting a fountain every time the fight goes long. It's crazy. This talent seems really good to me. Especially if you combined it with this adjustment now, because then you could get your W off cooldown faster, so you could take like shorter bursts of fights. That seems really good. All right, elixir damage bonus per stacks being increased. Quest reward cooldown reductions being increased. Cool. New build was a lot of fun. Got nerfed several times, and now they're slowly trying to bring it back. But until the quest makes it to where it pops on its own, I still don't know if this is going to get back into a meta build. I'd rather just take the auto attack range and then have these talents get more value. Running Wild, additional functionality, reduces dark flights and disengages cooldowns by 1 second. That talent, I don't remember what that talent did actually. It just increases the range, right? So now you have increased range and cooldown reduction. Okay. Gilnean Roulette, cooldown reduction increased from 20 to 24 seconds. Overall, I think these are pretty solid changes. If you play Greymane in Storm League, this is huge. This could easily bump up his win rate by a few percent. And if you're already playing Greymane in competitive, I think all these changes are just beneficial. You don't have to take any of these talents, so you still have a really strong hero in competitive. But if you take these talents, it can really set you apart. Nova. Nova's been in a weird spot. I've been recommending a rework for quite some time because the only playstyle she's used in competitive is kind of more of being annoying, where you use your ult to clear minion waves, and all over the map you get bribe stacks and bribe charges, and you bribe enemy camps. And then they're on a lower cooldown because of how your bribe works. So you basically are just repeatedly bribing the enemy camps, using your ult to clear waves, and then you just sit in between rotations and you just dismount people. And that playstyle has solidified her a spot in competitive. In very niche maps and niche scenarios. Outside of that playstyle, she's not really played in the upper levels of anything at all. And so I think it's time to look at her seriously. So covert ops, required stealth duration reduced. Pinning shots slow amount is being increased. Won't make a huge difference. Required stealth duration is being reduced. Mana per second is being increased. Not bad. Makes her a little bit snappier out of team fights to get back into what you want to do. Rapid projection, cost and cooldown reductions being increased. Hollow stability, additional functionality reduces the cooldown of Ghost Protocol by 15 seconds. That's your activatable that makes you stealth and then summons a clone. Perfect shot, change functionality, hitting an enemy hero reduces snipes cooldown by 2 seconds and reduces half its mana cost doubled against heroes. Is that reduces all of its mana cost and 4 seconds off the cooldown of your Q, because your Q's like a 3-second cooldown, isn't it? So I'm going to say that the mana cost is the only thing it's affecting. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Snipe's a 5-second cooldown. Bonus damage increased from 60 to 65%. Probably won't make too much of a difference. Precision strike, cooldown reduction down to 50 seconds. That's how they were clearing lanes. And Precision Barrage cooldown reduction reduced from 30 to 25. So it's still the same cooldown at... No, it still cuts it in half. So it just goes from... it used to go from 60 to 30. Now it goes from 50 to 25. Here's my frustration with this. All it does is makes her annoying playstyle more annoying. I would have liked to see them get that tri-shot down to like a 40-second cooldown. I would have liked to see maybe like a wave clear talent early game that competes with Bribe, so that you don't have to take your ult just to wave clear. And I would have liked to see something that adds a little bit more reliability into her damage, rather than like you miss one Q and you lose half your damage. But whatever. I think these are certainly changes that'll help her win rate at least. Probius just got a buff, but outside of being played in 4 games in competitive, winning 3 of them, and then losing the last one, and people kind of went back to not wanting to play Probius again, his win rate did bump up a little bit. So I'm surprised to see that the changes they do are a little buff heavier, but they do reduce the or increase the cooldown of Warp and Pylon. Enemy heroes and minions drop minerals on death, gather minerals to reduce Warp and Pylon's cooldown. Oh, actually, that's kind of cool. So they didn't really nerf it, because all you need to do is pick up 3 minerals from minions to get the cooldown back, right? So overall, that's a buff. This is a buff. Cooldown reduction increase. This is a buff. So they're just buffing Probius. I didn't think that he was bad right now. I thought his win rate was pretty solid. I've seen a lot of people dominate with him. And even in the competitive scene, he was used a little bit. I was going to do why the pros play, but then I noticed some problems in those games that he was played. In the 3 games that he was played, he didn't do anything that another mage wouldn't have done. And that's the reason I didn't make a why the pros play on Probius, is because everything that he did in that game, Jaina could have done. But Jaina's normal, and I don't need a video on why the pros are playing Jaina. I think they did it more because the enemies didn't know what to deal with it, rather than because they could have just played Jaina. With these buffs, though, I do think that his win rate in normal games is going to increase again, and in competitive, he'll likely still see an increase there. Tracer's been the strongest of the mosquito damage dealers. If you guys aren't familiar with what mosquito is, it's basically just a term to say damage dealer that's probably not going to lead to a lot of damage or a lot of kills, but more is going to finish off targets that get a little too far away from your main damage dealers, disrupt people from doing what they want to do, and they're hard to deal with. If you've ever had like a really annoying mosquito, I think a fly might be a better term, but like you try to like hit a fly and they're always just flying around, and it's really hard to deal with them. They're more annoying than anything else. That's the truth about mosquitoes. They can go into your backline, deal damage, and if you commit a lot of resources dealing with them, they don't need to commit a lot of resources to get out. Tracer's still the best of these. Genji's another one. Lucio's one in the healer role. Karazim's one in the healer role. There's a lot of different mosquitoes, but Tracer tends to be the best one for this. 1-2 punch cooldown between uses is increased. Pulse generator healing reduced from 25% to 18%. Untouchable movement speed bonus is being reduced, and jumper shield amount is being reduced. So they're nerfing all of her meta talents, and they're not touching any of her non-meta talents. Overall, I think this is a good change. We'll drop her in priority a little bit in the competitive environment, while still leaving her in the same spot that she was in outside of competitive, or at least pretty close. A lot of bug fixes, Joanna, Lunara, Probius, all the usual ones that we've been seeing. And overall, that was February 1st balance patch. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know. As always, you can join my Discord. We chat about changes that have happened. We chat about the game, about some other games. So feel free to join there. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching.